Chapter 1. The Ghost Among the Stars. In the vast, silent sea of the cosmos, where stars burned like scattered embers in the dark and the infinite blackness stretched beyond comprehension, the Forgotten whispered. Among the countless relics that drifted aimlessly between the shattered worlds and dead suns, there lay a ship, ancient beyond reckoning, veiled in mystery and sorrow. To most, it was a ghost, a shadow of a bygone era, a floating sarcophagus sealed by time and silence. But to Kale, a lost boy with nothing but a heart burdened by absence and a soul desperate for answers, this derelict was a beacon, a calling that echoed across light years and the silent void, promising truths that had long been buried beneath the weight of years. Kale's life had been forged on the fringes of civilization, in the ramshackle colonies that orbited fading stars and the ruins of planets once teeming with life. His world was a patchwork of scavengers, traders, and forgotten dreamers, a fragile existence held together by thin threads of hope and the constant hum of machinery. Since the day his father vanished without a trace, swallowed by the depths of space on a mission whispered about, but never openly discussed, Kale had clung to fragments of stories and half-remembered legends. The official records listed his father as lost, presumed dead during a routine expedition. But Kale's heart refused to accept such a finality. Somewhere, out there in the abyss, there was a truth waiting to be found. It was on a routine salvage run, far beyond the beaten paths and charted trade routes, that Kale's pod detected an anomaly, an object drifting without propulsion, cloaked in shadows and cosmic dust, yet unmistakably artificial. The ship was colossal, dwarfed only by the stars themselves, its hull cracked and battered by the ceaseless bombardment of meteoroids and radiation, yet intact enough to suggest it had been preserved by design or fate. The markings were faint, worn almost away by centuries, but a fragment of identification remained, a designation that stirred something deep within Kale's memory: the Vanguard Expanse. It was a name spoken only in hushed tones, a legend from an era long past, tied irrevocably to the fleet his father had commanded. Every moment as Kale approached was saturated with tension and anticipation. The abandoned ship hung suspended like a relic in a cosmic tomb, its massive form casting long shadows across the swirling nebulae nearby. The silence was profound, broken only by the soft hum of Kale's pod engines and the faint creaks of the ancient ship as it responded to the subtle gravitational tides of passing celestial bodies. There was no sign of life, no flicker of energy beyond the faintest traces of power deep within the vessel's core. Yet Kale felt the ship's presence as a pulse, a heartbeat beneath the metal and circuitry, as though it were waiting, watching, preserved in a state of suspended animation. Docking was a delicate operation. The ship's docking bay was sealed shut, the heavy blast doors warped but unyielding against time's relentless assault. Kale's hands flew over his console, interfacing with ancient control panels whose technology was archaic yet surprisingly resilient. The silence in the cockpit was punctuated only by the hiss of decompressing air and the faint click of mechanisms long dormant stirring to life. As the doors groaned open, a blast of stale, recycled atmosphere greeted Kale, a mixture of cold metal, burnt circuitry, and a faint trace of something almost organic, like the memory of life itself embedded in the ship's very structure. Stepping inside, Kale was enveloped in shadows broken by shafts of pale light filtering through cracked panels and fractured glass. The interior was a labyrinth of corridors and chambers, their walls lined with faded murals and symbols that spoke of a proud legacy now lost to history. The silence was oppressive, as if the ship itself mourned the absence of its crew, the echoes of footsteps long faded but never forgotten. As Kale moved deeper, the air grew heavy with the weight of secrets, and every sound, the scrape of his boots against metal, the distant creak of settling structures, was amplified into a symphony of loneliness. It was in the ship's central hub that Kale found what he had not dared to hope for: a data core still faintly pulsating with life, its systems barely alive but operational. With trembling fingers, he interfaced with the ancient technology, fingers flying across holographic interfaces that flickered to life in response to his touch. The screen glowed, displaying fragmented logs, encrypted messages, and cryptic symbols. Then, amidst the static, A transmission burst through clear, unmistakable, and impossibly familiar. Kale, if you are hearing this, then the worst has happened, and I am no longer with you. But know this: your journey is only beginning. The answers you seek lie within the expanse and beyond. Trust no one but yourself. Find the truth. Find me. The voice was unmistakably his father's, weathered, filled with urgency and love, a ghost from the past speaking across centuries. Kale's heart hammered as the realization crashed upon him. The ship was not merely abandoned, but a vault of messages, a beacon left by his father for him to discover. The mystery of the disappearance, the silence that had haunted him for years, suddenly surged alive with possibility. The Vanguard expanse was a vessel of hope and despair, a puzzle waiting to be solved, and Kale was now its reluctant heir, destined to uncover the truth buried in the stars. Kale's hands trembled slightly as he guided his salvage pod toward the massive silhouette of the ancient ship. The vast vessel floated eerily against the star-speckled void, its hull scarred and pockmarked from centuries of neglect and cosmic debris. Despite its battered state, there was an undeniable majesty about it, a silent testimony to a bygone era when fleets like this roamed the stars with purpose and pride. His heart pounded with a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. This was no ordinary derelict. This was a relic from his father's time, the ship that had vanished along with him so many years ago. The faded markings along the ship's bow told a story lost to most. Vanguard Expanse, flagship of the stellar exploration fleet, launched centuries before Kale's birth. To the galaxy, it was just a legend, a ghost ship said to have disappeared mysteriously in uncharted space. But to Kale, it was a fragile thread tying him to the father he never truly knew, a man whose absence shaped his entire existence. The docking bay doors were sealed tight, but Kale's pod was equipped for these scavenger runs, and with practiced precision, he initiated the sequence to override the ancient locking mechanisms. Sparks flew and metal groaned as rusted panels shifted and hissed, revealing the yawning interior. A stale, cold atmosphere greeted him, mixed with the faint hum of dormant machinery awakening after centuries. As he stepped inside, the gravity of the place hit him, silence heavier than the vacuum outside, punctuated by the occasional creak of settling metal. Every corridor was a capsule of history. Panels flickered weakly with failing power, and faded emblems lined the walls, hinting at proud missions, distant stars explored, and dangers faced long ago. Dust motes danced in the shafts of emergency lighting, casting ghostly patterns across control consoles frozen in time. Kale felt the weight of centuries pressing on him, as if the ship itself remembered the lives once lived within its steel bones. Then, deep within the ship's core, Kale found the command center. Here, the heart of the Vanguard Expanse still pulsed faintly, a fragile spark against the vast darkness. The main console blinked erratically, struggling to maintain power, but it was enough to activate the holographic interface. Data streams, fragmented and corrupted, spilled into the air in shifting patterns of light. Kale's breath caught when he spotted a message file marked urgent, time-stamped nearly 8 centuries ago. With a trembling hand, he activated it. The holographic image flickered to life, a weathered man's face, aged by years and wearied by cosmic solitude, but unmistakably the man Kale had spent his entire life searching for, his father. "My son," the message began, voice heavy with emotion. "If you are seeing this, then fate has led you to me, though so many years have passed. I was lost to the darkness between stars, betrayed by those I trusted most. But I left this message to guide you, to tell you that your journey is only beginning. The truth about our past, our family, and the future of humanity lies hidden within this ship. Trust no one else. Follow the path I've left, and one day, we will meet again." Kale's eyes burned with tears as the message faded, replaced by a star map etched in holographic light, a cryptic trail pointing toward unknown regions of space, and secrets waiting to be unraveled. The boy who had been lost to grief was no longer alone. The abandoned ship, silent for centuries, had become a beacon of hope, a portal to mysteries that only he could solve. The galaxy awaited. Chapter 2. Echoes of the Past and Shadows of Conspiracy. The ancient ship loomed silently in the blackness of space, an artifact of a time when humanity's reach was bold and unrestrained, and the stars were both a frontier and a promise. Kale had barely slept since awakening the derelict systems and discovering the cryptic message from his father, a message that ignited a fire of determination within him. Yet, the more he delved into the ship's data archives and star charts, the more the magnitude of what he had stumbled upon sank into his bones. This was no simple wreck lost to time. It was a vault of secrets, a relic intertwined with forces far beyond a lone scavenger's grasp. Every corridor, every chamber whispered stories of ambition, betrayal, and the shadows lurking behind the shining facade of exploration and progress. Navigating the labyrinthine hallways, Kale was struck by the sheer scale of the ship's technology, its fusion of mechanical precision and bioorganic interfaces that pulsed with a quiet, eerie life. The ship's AI, ancient yet remarkably sophisticated, responded to his presence with cautious curiosity, awakening systems that had long slumbered. Flickering consoles illuminated the darkness with holographic displays, revealing logs and encrypted files that teased glimpses of the past missions lost to official histories, conflicts erased from records, and a conspiracy that hinted at corruption reaching the highest echelons of interstellar governance. Kale immersed himself in these archives, sifting through decades of encrypted transmissions, personal logs, and mission briefings. Each revelation was a piece of a puzzle that stretched beyond his personal quest, uncovering a web of deceit that had ensnared his father. The man had not vanished by accident or misfortune, but had been silenced, hunted by powerful factions threatened by his discoveries. His father's final message was not just a call for reunion, but a warning: truths buried beneath layers of lies, truths that could reshape humanity's future and topple entrenched powers. The ship itself seemed to respond to the unfolding narrative, corridors shifting subtly, as if the vessel were alive, protecting its secrets. Kale realized that the Vanguard expanse was designed not only for exploration but as a mobile fortress, equipped with defensive systems and cloaking technologies that explained its disappearance from known space. As he activated more of the ship's functions, he encountered encrypted compartments and sealed vaults, each holding artifacts, data cores, and biosamples preserved in stasis, relics of scientific endeavors that blurred the lines between human and alien biology. Amidst the revelations, Kale found traces of a mysterious project, one that involved experiments on unknown life forms and the harnessing of exotic energy sources. The ethical boundaries of these endeavors were murky, and hints of dissent among the crew suggested internal conflict that may have precipitated the ship's isolation. His father's log entries grew increasingly desperate and fragmented as the final days approached, speaking of shadowy figures and betrayals that left him isolated and hunted aboard his own flagship. With every step deeper into the ship's heart, Kale's resolve was tested not only by the weight of truth, but by the shadows closing in beyond the vessel. Unknown entities, perhaps remnants of those who had sought to silence his father, lurked in the periphery of sensor readings, their intentions unclear but undoubtedly hostile. The vast emptiness of space became a stage for a dangerous game of cat and mouse, where survival hinged on wit, courage, and the secrets locked within the Vanguard expanse. As Kale grappled with the enormity of his inheritance, he forged alliances with the ship's dormant AI and unlocked cryptic messages left by loyal crew members who had sacrificed everything to protect the truth. Their voices, echoes from the past, became guides for Kale, illuminating paths of resistance and hope. He learned that his journey was not merely to uncover his father's fate, but to carry forward a legacy that could awaken humanity to threats lurking in the shadows of the stars. In the silent chambers of the ship, Kale confronted the intertwining of personal loss and galactic intrigue, understanding that his own story was woven into the fabric of a cosmic struggle, a battle for truth, freedom, and the soul of a future still unwritten. The journey ahead was perilous and uncertain, but with each revelation, Kale felt the faint stirrings of hope, a chance to bring light to the darkness and reclaim what was lost. Chapter 3: The Labyrinth of Truth and the Burden of Legacy. The void around the Vanguard expanse was as unforgiving as the truths it concealed. Cale found himself engulfed in a reality that stretched far beyond the simple quest to understand his father's fate. He was now a reluctant heir to secrets and responsibilities that weighed heavily on his young shoulders. The ship was no mere relic, no inert tomb lost to the stars. It was a fortress of knowledge and power, bristling with technologies that blurred the lines between science and the almost mystical. As Cale ventured deeper into its bowels, the labyrinth of corridors and chambers became a mirror of the complexity within himself, the interplay of hope, doubt, and the raw hunger for truth. The ship's AI, which Cale had tentatively named Sentinel, awoke fully as its systems re-engaged, responding to his presence not only with cautious data feeds, but with a subtle consciousness that seemed to understand the import of the boy's journey. Sentinel was a guardian, a repository of memories and systems intertwined with the ship's very essence, and it began to guide Cale through the maze of decks layered in history. The corridors hummed with latent energy, lighting flickering in response to their passage, and the walls were adorned with holographic murals depicting scenes of voyages, battles, and scientific breakthroughs from a time when humanity reached eagerly into the stars. Yet beneath the surface, there were warnings, hidden subtexts in the logs, encrypted data caches locked behind biometric failsafes that Cale struggled to override. The deeper he ventured, the more Cale felt the ship's weight as a bearer of a legacy long ignored by those in power. It was a vessel that had once symbolized humanity's boundless ambition and the peril of that same ambition. The data cores revealed experiments with quantum fields, terraforming technologies, and bioengineering feats that pushed ethical boundaries to the brink. Most disturbing were the records of dissent and betrayal, crew members whose loyalty was fractured by fear and political manipulation, fracturing the unity that once made the Vanguard expanse an emblem of hope. Cale pieced together the last days of the ship's voyage and exodus from a conspiracy that sought to control not only the ship, but the very future of humanity's expansion. In the echoing halls of the ship's lower decks, Cale uncovered the clandestine project codenamed Genesis Veil. It was an initiative to harness a mysterious energy source harvested from a dying star, capable of reshaping planetary ecosystems, but dangerously unstable. The project's logs detailed both breathtaking scientific promise and creeping dread as the power began to unravel the fabric of the ship itself. His father's voice surfaced again in fragmented recordings, filled with anguish and determination, pleading for a chance to stop forces that saw the ship as a weapon rather than a beacon. The message hinted at a betrayal within the highest councils of the Galactic Federation, a web of corruption that had driven the Vanguard expanse into exile and silence. The labyrinthine nature of the ship mirrored the complexity of the mysteries Cale now sought to unravel. As he activated sealed compartments and bypassed security protocols, the physical environment changed. Subtly organic textures blossomed alongside cold metal, and corridors shifted with a biomechanical fluidity that suggested the ship itself was alive, protecting its secrets with adaptive intelligence. This living architecture was both a marvel and a challenge, forcing Cale to confront the boundaries of his understanding and to rely on Sentinel's guidance more deeply than he had anticipated. Every step forward was a step into the unknown, fraught with the possibility of discovery and danger alike. Yet it was not just technology that awaited Cale in the ship's heart, but a deeper reckoning with his own identity. As the personal logs and holographic memories unfolded, he glimpsed his father not only as the legendary captain and scientist, but as a man grappling with fear, hope, and the weight of sacrifice. The human side of the myth became vivid moments of tenderness with family, the isolation of command, and the burden of secrets carried alone. Cale felt the sting of loneliness reflected back at him, but also a fierce pride in the legacy he was inheriting. This inheritance was not only of blood, but of purpose to uncover the truth, to bear the torch passed down through years of silence and shadows. Beyond the confines of the ship, however, the galaxy itself was stirring. Sensor readings indicated pursuit shadowy figures and fleets whose allegiances remained obscured, but whose intent was unmistakably hostile. The same forces that had silenced his father were still at large, hunting the Vanguard expanse's secrets with relentless determination. Kale understood that his journey was no longer one of exploration alone, but a desperate flight from enemies who would stop at nothing to claim the power the ship harbored. His actions now had consequences far beyond the isolated corridors and data cores. They rippled across star systems, drawing allies and adversaries into the unfolding drama. Amidst these external threats, Kale found unexpected allies, fragments of the ship's original crew preserved in suspended animation, awakened by the reactivation of systems. These survivors, caught in a frozen limbo for centuries, brought with them first-hand knowledge and diverse perspectives that enriched Kale's understanding of the ship's past and the political complexities that had doomed it. Their presence was a balm and a challenge. Together, they formed a fragile community bound by shared history and uncertain futures. Trust was hard-won in the shadow of betrayal, but necessity forged bonds stronger than time. In quiet moments, Kale wrestled with the enormity of his burden. The path laid before him was tangled with uncertainty and sacrifice, yet it also glimmered with the promise of redemption, not only for his father's name, but for humanity's fractured place among the stars. The Vanguard expanse was no longer a tomb, but a cradle of renewal, a vessel carrying the hopes and fears of generations. As he stood on the bridge, gazing into the infinite night, Kale felt the quiet resolve of one who must become more than a lost boy. He must become the keeper of a legacy written in stardust and shadow. Chapter 4. The Dawn Beyond the Horizon. The void stretched endlessly around the Vanguard expanse, a dark sea dotted with distant stars that twinkled like distant memories, silent, cold, and indifferent to the storms brewing within the hearts of those who dared to traverse its depths. For Kale, standing now on the bridge of the ancient ship that had long been his only link to a past obscured by silence and mystery, this moment was both an end and a beginning. The journey from lost boy to bearer of a cosmic legacy had been marked by revelations and betrayals, by allies found and enemies made in the shadow of forgotten wars and hidden conspiracies. Yet the vastness of space promised no respite, no simple resolution. It demanded courage, wisdom, and sacrifice beyond anything Kale had ever imagined. The ship's systems hummed with renewed life, their biotechnological heart beating in synchrony with Kale's own resolve. Luminous conduits pulsed beneath the deck plating, casting ethereal glows that danced across the contours of the bridge. Screens flickered with streams of datastar maps, encrypted messages, and communications intercepted from shadowy factions still hunting the Vanguard's secrets. Sentinel, the ship's AI consciousness, had matured beyond its initial cautiousness, becoming a guide, a protector, and a companion in the cold loneliness of space. Its voice was steady, imbued with an almost human empathy that comforted Kale even as the unknown stretched before him. Kale's mind was heavy with the weight of decisions. The decrypted archives had revealed the scale of the conspiracy that had engulfed his father and the fleet, a network of powerful entities whose ambition threatened to plunge entire star systems into chaos. The genetic experiments, the weaponized energies, and the ruthless purge of dissenters were all parts of a terrible design to seize control over the very fabric of life and evolution. Yet buried within those secrets was a beacon, a hope encoded within the ship's core, a safeguard left by his father and his comrades to restore balance and truth when the darkness threatened to consume all. The galaxy's political landscape was shifting rapidly. Fractured alliances and secret coalitions maneuvered with lethal precision, each seeking advantage in the shadows of emerging conflict. Kale knew the Vanguard expanse was more than a ship. It was a symbol, a prize, and a weapon. Its reawakening had sent ripples through the cosmic web, drawing attention from distant worlds and unseen watchers. As he prepared the vessel for the next stage of its mission, Kale understood that survival hinged not only on technology and firepower, but on forging new alliances and inspiring hope in a fractured universe. The crew that had awakened from stasis, remnants of the old fleet, gathered in the ship's communal chamber, their faces etched with the passage of centuries and the burden of memory. Among them were scientists who had once whispered of forbidden knowledge, engineers who had maintained the Vanguard through its darkest hours, and warriors who had faced annihilation with unyielding resolve. Their loyalty was now pledged to Kale, a young leader thrust into a role shaped by destiny and desperation. Together, they debated strategy, shared stories, and healed old wounds, forging a fragile but unbreakable unity. Kale spent long hours in the ship's command sanctum, poring over star charts and intercepted communications. He charted courses through unexplored sectors, seeking refuge and reinforcements among lost colonies and hidden bases. Each decision was a gamble. The margin for error was slim, and the cost of failure unimaginable. Yet the young captain's determination burned bright. He would not let his father's sacrifice be in vain. He would lead the vanguard and its scattered allies into a new dawn, one where truth and freedom could flourish once more. Outside, the stars seemed to watch silently as the vanguard expanse slipped into hyperspace, leaving behind the remnants of old wars and stepping into the uncertain light of the future. Kale stood at the observation window, his gaze fixed on the swirling colors of the jump portal, and felt the quiet hope that had carried him through the darkest nights. The galaxy was vast, its secrets many, and its dangers real, but in that moment, the lost boy was no longer lost. He was the bearer of a legacy written among the stars, a promise of renewal and the dawn beyond the horizon. The hyperspace jump cast the vanguard expanse through a kaleidoscope of stars, twisting and stretching time and space until the ship emerged into a new sector, unfamiliar yet promising. The void beyond the viewport was vast and quiet, but Kale felt the weight of countless eyes, some wary allies, others ruthless enemies, focused upon this singular beacon of hope and defiance. The ship's AI, Sentinel, hummed softly, its voice threaded with both reassurance and urgency. New coordinates plotted, Captain. Possible safe haven in the Carina cluster. However, sensor readings indicate an unknown fleet in pursuit. They are close. Kale's jaw tightened as the old fears resurfaced. The forces that had hunted his father, that had orchestrated the downfall of the Vanguard expanse, had not relented. They had adapted, evolved, and grown more dangerous. But so had he. The boy who had once scavenged derelicts on the fringe worlds was now the captain of a living legend, charged with a mission far greater than himself, to protect the legacy of truth, to challenge the darkness threatening to snuff out the light of countless civilizations. In the days that followed, the ship's sensors detected communications, fragmented signals from scattered colonies and factions long believed lost or destroyed. These voices carried echoes of resistance, messages encoded with hope and warnings of the growing shadow. Kale responded, carefully weaving diplomatic overtures with strategic warnings, stitching together a fragile alliance from the scattered remnants of humanity's once great exploratory fleets. Every alliance was a risk. Every act of trust carried the shadow of betrayal. Yet Kale understood that survival depended not only on technology, but on the rekindling of unity and purpose among the stars. Inside the ship, the crew, the awakened remnants of the Vanguard's original fleet, prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Training drills filled the corridors, blending the ancient battle protocols with new tactics and technology gleaned from their scattered allies. Kale spent hours with them, sharing stories of his father's courage and the vision that had sustained the fleet even in exile. The bonds forged in those moments were a testament to resilience, a family reunited across time and space, ready to stand as one against the encroaching darkness. As the pursuing fleet closed in, Kale ordered the Vanguard into a defensive formation near a dense asteroid field, a natural fortress where their knowledge of the ship and environment could even the odds. The battle that ensued was brutal and unforgiving. Energy beams tore through the silence, missiles streaked like deadly comets, and the living ship responded with a symphony of defense, shields shimmering like liquid glass, weapon arrays firing with precision honed over centuries. Kale's mind was a whirlwind of strategy and instinct, each decision a thread in the fragile tapestry of survival. Amidst the chaos, Sentinel revealed a final secret, a dormant weapon system hidden deep within the ship's core, capable of generating a focused burst of energy that could disable entire fleets, but at great risk to the ship itself. It was a last resort, a gambit that Kale knew could decide the fate of everyone aboard. With a steady hand and fierce determination, he activated the system, channeling the power through the ship's bioorganic matrix. A blinding pulse erupted, sweeping across the battlefield and crippling the enemy fleet's propulsion and weapons. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the cheers of survivors and the soft hum of the ship's recovery systems. In the aftermath, Kale stood once more on the observation deck, looking out into the vastness of space. The stars were no longer just distant points of light. They were beacons of hope, reminders of the legacy his father had entrusted to him. The ship beneath his feet was no longer a tomb, but a cradle of future possibilities. Kale's voice echoed softly in the chamber as he spoke into the comms, sending a message of unity and renewal to every corner of the galaxy. To those who hear this, the Vanguard expanse lives. The fight is not over. But together, we will reclaim the stars. As the ship charted its course toward the next horizon, Kale allowed himself a moment of peace, a brief silence amid the endless journey. The lost boy had found not only the ship but his purpose, his family, and a future written in the light of 1,000 stars.